Welcome to the NHL season preview for the 24-25 season. We're starting off with the brand new logoed Anaheim Ducks. New logo and new jerseys for this Ducks team were in Greg Cronin's now second year. The team was really bad last season. They weren't supposed to be good, but it was a step back from the year prior. Cronin is going to have his pick at combinations for his young forward core, but he has a lot of work to do with this Ducks team. They ranked 30th in both goals for and against last season. They had an 8th worst power play and 2nd worst penalty kill. But I'm more positive on this Ducks team this year. Big move that they made was a trade for Robby Fabbri. Fabbri gonna have to stay healthy, has had 3 knee surgeries since entering the league back in 2015. They trade for former Penguin defenseman Brian Dumoulin from the Seattle Kraken for a 4th round pick to help their very young defensive core. Gibson is starting the season on IR. It'll be Lucas Dostal in net, who actually had a pretty solid end of season last year for the Ducks. Is this the year Gibson finally gets moved? Rumors swirl about the American goaltender every season. I'm wondering if this season's finally the year that Gibson gets traded. The Ducks selected and shocked the world with Beckett Senek at the 3rd overall pick this past draft. Very offensive-minded forward, and I'm sure will provide a spark for the Ducks offense in the future. Connor Gauthier is a rookie watch for me. He's going to have to come into this Ducks team, like I mentioned, very young. He's going to have to be an offensive threat right away and make an impact in my eyes. And as for playoffs, no shot for them. As for the Arizona Coyotes, well, we'll get into them a bit later. The Boston Bruins last season have a very good season, a step back from the year before. They lost in the 2nd round to the eventual Cup champs Florida Panthers in 6 games. Is this Brad Marchand's last season? He's 36. It's his last year of his contract. The Bruins traded Linus Ullmark to the Ottawa Senators, reacquired their own 1st round pick in 2024, and Jonas Korpisalo. And now officially, there is your new goaltending duo. It is now Swayman and most likely Korpisalo, after the Jeremy Swayman drama has finally been put to bed. 8 by 8.25 for Jeremy Swayman. The Bruins are coming into this season in better shape than last season, in my opinion. I do love their defensive core. It's a big defensive core. They traded away Jakub Blacko to Minnesota for a guy like Vinny Lettieri who can come in and provide some depth on the bottom 6. He's a familiar face in that organization already. They've added, like I just mentioned, a big defenseman in Nikita Zadorov in free agency. Nikita Zadorov is going to have to gel with that defensive core in Boston. Jeremy Swayman coming in now, it's going to be a different look for the Bruins, but I like the way they look coming into the season. A little bit better of a defensive-minded team, like I mentioned. Elias Lindholm now also coming into this team as a free agent. Don Sweeney went to work this offseason and wasn't playing around. I think you're going to have to ask for a lot out of guys like Beecher, Poitras, and Brazois to provide more of a spark and be effective in their roles. At the end of the day, this league runs through Florida, who may not be as strong as they were depth-wise last season. But still, they're the standard to win. So if the Bruins can get guys like Beecher, Poitras, and Brazois to elevate their game, I think the Bruins can be a fun team for me this season. The Buffalo Sabres, last season, 39-37-6. They're already off to an 0-2 start. They played the 2 games in Czechia. Not a great start, but we're going to try to just move past that until they get back to North America and play games here. Sabres need to take a next step this year. They have to. They were supposed to last year and make the playoffs. They didn't. No more Don Granato. He was canned at the end of the regular season. The most successful coach in Buffalo Sabre history returns to Buffalo. The last guy to get them to the playoffs. Lindy Ruff is now the head coach in Buffalo. My whole thing with Lindy is here, if he couldn't do it with the guys in Jersey, I don't know if he could do it with the guys in Buffalo. Got to figure out who the goalie is. UPL had almost 60 starts this year with Devin Levi sprinkling some time in both the NHL and AHL. It's UPL's crease to lose, in my opinion. Big trade with the Oilers, sending over one of their top prospects in Matt Savoy in exchange for a guy who played a big role in the Oilers' run to the Cup, Ryan McLeod. Career best 30 points in 81 games last year for McLeod. They're going to need the Sabres young guys to step up. Not too many offseason moves to improve the forward core other than that trade. Tage Thompson last season, only 29 goals, 56 points. A guy I also like, who may also now unfortunately got hurt in the Prague game, is JJ Peterka. Only 22 goals last year for Tuck. There's more to him there. They're hoping Power takes a step up this year. I just think there's more to Buffalo, and I think we might be able to get a taste of that. and hopefully we might be able to get to see that this year. Trophy watch for me, Rasmus Dahlin's a guy who could possibly win the Norris Trophy this year. The Calgary Flames last season, 38, 39, and 5. This offseason, they went to work. 2 years ago, they only missed the playoffs by 2 points. This season, they had the same amount of wins as the year before, but finished 24th in the whole NHL. They trade away Jacob Markstrom for a top 10 protected 2025 first-round pick, and Kevin Ball to the New Jersey Devils. All eyes now turn to Dustin Wolf and Dan Vladar as your projected goaltending duo in Calgary. I'm not sure where these goalies can get you. I also don't know where the D-core itself can get you in Calgary. The forward core for the Flames isn't the worst. Kadri was better in year 2 than in year 1. But Huberdeau has to be better than 55 points. I mean, Calgary needs better than 55 points from Jonathan Huberdeau. In free agency, they add a guy like Anthony Mantha on a 1-year deal. They signed Cup champ Ryan Lomberg to a 2-year deal. I do like the makeup of the offense a lot more than the defense core. Calgary's an interesting team to me. I really do like Andrei Kuzmenko. I'm sure he'll still be that star power for the Calgary Flames this year. Playoffs, I don't see it this year for the Flames in the playoffs. The Hurricanes and Rod Brind'Amour will be a force to be reckoned with this season once again, but in my opinion got a bit weaker than last season, but I really do like the additions they made, and they are turning now a page in their franchise. Jake Gensel aside, they lost a lot of big pieces to their core. They lost Teravainen, lost Shea, lost Pesce, lost Nason. They've added Sean Walker to the back end, a little reunion with Shane Gostisbehere on the back end as well. These guys play a different game than Shea and Pesce. It's going to be a different type of defense core in Carolina. They've brought in Will Carrier and Jack Roslovic for the forward core. I love the Will Carrier move. I think he fits perfectly in Carolina and will gel there. But what's going to get this Carolina team over the hump? They didn't have enough to get through the New York Rangers in the playoffs last season, albeit going up against Igor Shesterkin. But honestly, they had the Rangers on the ropes. They lost a few overtime games early in that series. It could have easily been Panthers Hurricanes in the conference finals. I truly believe that. So will these moves get them over the top? And another thing, who's your goalie? Because last season, Freddie was kind of the guy that let you down in the playoffs. So no clue who Carolina's number 1 goaltender is still. However, the Hurricanes will have no problem. They will be making the playoffs, in my opinion, this year. As for a team who not sure will be making the playoffs, Connor Bedard and the Chicago Blackhawks. The Blackhawks in the middle of their rebuild, not sure how much they really want to compete this year. However, they want to take a step in the right direction. And clearly, you can see that by some of their offseason moves. They'll get Taylor Hall and Ryan Donato back healthy to their forward core, which to me is a really big thing, along with the free agents you've added now this year. I actually like the ads and contracts of Tyler Bertuzzi and the reunion with Teuvo Teravainen. And these guys are veterans coming in to help Connor Bedard transition his game, into years 2, 3, 4 to make the transition now into a superstar NHL player. They add veterans like TJ Brody and Alec Martinez to the back end. But like I mentioned, I'm sure all of these guys are here to provide some support for this transition that the Blackhawks rebuild is going through. They have one of the biggest prospect pools in the NHL, so I'm sure throughout the season we'll be seeing a lot of guys coming up and making their Like I mentioned before, big prospect pool for the Blackhawks. I'm sure we'll see a lot of young guys coming up to make their debut this year. If you guys are enjoying the video, please remember to leave a like. Alright, now the Colorado Avalanche. Gabriel Landeskog has not played since the 21-22 playoffs. He's expected to possibly return this year. He no update yet as of last week. Last week was that, he will possibly resume skating within the next couple of months, so that's a good sign. They're not as deep as they used to be as a team. As a forward core, they're not as deep. I'm always going to be questioning Alexander Georgiev. If the Avalanche want to go anywhere this year, they're going to need McKinnon and Makar to really be solid. The Hart Trophy for McKinnon and the Norris Trophy for Makar, those are my watches for this team this season. Their D-core is obviously lethal with Makar and Taze. I actually like their depth on the back end a lot more than their forward core. The success of the Avalanche will rely on, like I mentioned before, their biggest guns. We will see if Val Nichushkin even makes a return for the Avalanche. Just because he's eligible to return in a couple of months doesn't mean he will. But it looks like it's projected that Nichushkin, when reinstated back into the league, he can be a Colorado Avalanche again. The Columbus Blue Jackets, a team who will be playing with the heaviest of hearts this season after the tragedy to the Gaudreau brothers over the summer. The Blue Jackets have a new GM in Don Waddell and a new head coach in Dean Evason. I'm rooting really hard for the Columbus Blue Jackets this year. Getting into some of their moves, they traded Patrick Laine away to Montreal for Jordan Harris, a very good young defenseman. We're entering Fantilli year 2, which will be special to see. The defensive core for the Blue Jackets is solid, one of the weaker ones in the Metropolitan Division, but I do like that left side. When healthy, Zach Werenski is a top 10 left-handed defenseman in the NHL. Elvis will be their number 1 goalie. We might see Jet Greaves sooner rather than later. Like I mentioned, Fantilli in year 2 hopefully will get more than 49 games this year. Got injured last season. On to the Dallas Stars, who lost in the Western Conference Finals last season in 6 games to the Edmonton Oilers. Now that's back-to-back years for the Dallas Stars losing in the Western Conference Finals. Can't get over that hump. I still love this team's makeup, even with Joe Pavelski retiring. He was their second leading point scorer. They add some guys to their defensive core, Dumba, Smith, Lyubushkin. They bought out Ryan Suter, but I still love the makeup of this Dallas Stars team. A trophy watch for me is actually going to be the Stanley Cup. I think this might be one of the years that Dallas can finally push through. Their decor now looks different. I mentioned Dumba and Smith coming in. I'm still convinced that Miro Heiskanen needs to be that number 1 defenseman to be a propeller for them. To really elevate the Stars, especially in the playoffs, I think this will be a coming out party for Heiskanen this year. I think his trophy, obviously the Norris. Oh man, this is going to be a fun team to watch. A bunch of free agency signings from the last 2 off seasons. And they made some more additions to a team that was very close to making the playoffs last year. Went down to the last game of the season. This team offensively needs to be great. They re-signed Patrick Kane. They brought in Vladimir Tarasenko, Tyler Mott to the forward core. They added Eric Gustafsson to the back end, who had a decent year playing third pairing minutes for the Rangers last year. I just mentioned every single guy was a Ranger. But now actually onto their goaltending situation. It's a goalie carousel. They've got Cam Talbot, Alex Lyon, and Ville Husso. They also have Jack Campbell, who just entered the Players Assistance Program. But a bunch of different guys to choose from. I think the guy that sticks out to me is Ville Husso. He's the blatant number 1 option. His numbers weren't magical the first season with the Wings. You add on to that lower body injury on December 18th. His first game back was the 13th. February, he played 9 minutes, exited that game with a different lower body injury, and that's all we saw of Ville Husso last season, so he's healthy. I think he's your number 1. I think Lyon's your number 2, and maybe you just bounce Cam Talbot around. But the Detroit Red Wings, to me, are a team that absolutely need to make the playoffs this season. I have them as making the playoffs this year, officially on this list, but yeah. Should be a fun year in Motor City for the Red Wings. They need to follow up what the Detroit Tigers are doing right now in Major League Baseball. I mean, it would just be electric. But if they miss the playoffs this year, it will be because of their goaltending and the defense core just defensively. We know Mo Seider and Lucas Raymond re-signed there, right? But Mo Seider on the back end, I think he needs to just take a step into his own now and become a defenseman in this league. Like I mentioned, Heiskanen now. He needs to now find that next level. Now moving on to a team, oh man, the Edmonton Oilers, who I saw a bunch of in-depth look on this team thanks to the Amazon series Inside the Axis, Inside the NHL. It's unbelievable. I highly recommend it. But the Edmonton Oilers are a team trophy watch to me. Yes, the Stanley Cup, Connor McDavid, the Hart Trophy, obviously. They hire Stan Bowman as their GM this offseason. Stanley Cup Finals loss in 7 games to the Florida Panthers last year. Chris Knobloch was an awesome coach coming in last season. He gets a full training camp now, a full season. Even after the short off season, the Oilers are ready to play in October. The Oilers added Jeff Skinner and Victor Arvidsson in free agency, and they're guys who I think fit really well in the top 6. Skinner can still skate really well. So I imagine him and McDavid maybe gelling better than people are predicting. Jeff Skinner, we all know how good of a skater he was coming up as a hockey player, former, I believe his sister was a former figure skater. Him himself used to practice by figure skating. He is one of the most talented skaters in the NHL, who is about to play alongside the fastest player in the NHL. So I think it's going to be a recipe for success. I still think Jeff Skinner's got a lot to him. Arvidsson will be a good fit. They lost Dylan Holloway and Philip Broberg after they were both offer sheeted by the Blues. The Oilers scrambled a bit to try to make things work and maybe bring one of them back by trading Cody Ceci to the Sharks in exchange for Ty Emberson, who was actually playing some pretty good hockey down the stretch for the Sharks last season. I think McDavid has no hangover. He has a season like he did last year. These are just going to have an unbelievable Magic year. They're going to rely on their offense once again, but this team is a lot better defensively coming into this season than they've ever been, in my opinion. Maybe not so many big names on the defense core, but Chris Knoblauch gets this team playing winning hockey. Speaking of winning hockey, on to the defending Stanley Cup champion, Florida Panthers. Selke watch? Yes. Alexander Barkov, absolutely. The Florida Panthers last season win the Stanley Cup, like I mentioned, and that's all that matters for right now. Because earlier before I said I think they got a little bit weaker. I'll explain why real quick. They've got some big re-signings done, however. Kulikov and Reinhart stay. Main pieces to their core. They're staying in Florida. Some big departures. Montour, OEL, Kevin Stenlund, and Tarasenko leave in free agency. They're bringing in Nate Schmidt and Adam Boquist for the D-core. We'll see where they slot in. They added Thomas Nosek, AJ Greer, and Mackenzie Entwistle to the forward core. I still love this Florida Panthers team. Paul Maurice gets this team playing playoff hockey all year long. They're the only team who can really play that effectively all year long. It's just unbelievable. But yeah, I still have them making the playoffs. It should be a fun year for the Florida Panthers. The Kings lost to the Oilers in 6 in round 2 and 23. They lose in 5 in round 1 and 24. They seem to run into the Oilers a lot in the playoffs. Partially why I don't love the playoff format still to this day. I think we have way too many repeating matchups. And recently for the LA Kings, when they repeat with the Oilers, it hasn't been good news. They made a huge splash on the trade market, acquiring Darcy Kemper and trading away Pierre-Luc Dubois to the Washington Capitals. The Kings have their best goalie since Jonathan Quick. Kemper can be a true number one goalie. I didn't really believe it when he was with Colorado. He won the Stanley Cup. I don't know if he got the greatest situation in Washington, but now going to LA, he could be the number one guy. The star for me in LA is always going to be Anze Kopitar. It always will be. However, Quentin Byfield is going to be the star of this team in the future. Head coach Jim Hiller will now have his opportunity at a full first year. They've signed Warren Fogle, former Edmonton Oilers, funny to watch there. And they've also signed Joel Edmondson for the defensive core. The Minnesota Wild, oh man, they did not make the playoffs last year. They will have a full head coaching year of John Hynes. I love Kirill Kaprizov and Brock Faber. I think they're electric players. Faber and Rossi are going to have to take another step in year 2 if the Wild want to see the playoffs. Honestly, every team before this, we kind of are knowing and expecting what to get out of them. But for the Minnesota Wild, I have no idea what to expect. This will be Marc-Andre Fleury's last season in the NHL. I'm hoping Minnesota can make the playoffs for him. I think they'll end up leaning towards Philip Gustafsson a lot this year. The Montreal Canadiens, another step in the rebuild. A similar team on paper to last year's team. I don't see them making the playoffs though this year. I just think there's a lot of competition in that Atlantic Division. A big trade, however, Patrick Laine on his way to Montreal. However, he is going to be out now a few months with that knee injury, possibly all year. It's a big blow for Montreal. It stinks. However, if healthy and when healthy, I think Patrick Laine is a great fit for this city in Montreal. I love that. I mean, when Demidov comes over and takes that step, it's just going to be unreal. But for this season, the team, like I mentioned, looks very similar on paper to last year. You get the healthy Kirby Dach. Their D-core is not the best. Gonna have to ask a lot out of guys who I'm not sure are capable of doing what's needed to be done to win games for the Habs. Their goaltending duo of Sam Montembeault and Caden Primo, not the most ideal goaltending duo. I think Montembeault will end up becoming the number one there, and emerge. He did last year, so it was the summer of Barry. What an offseason for the Nashville Predators and Barry Trotz. Big spender Barry. After just missing the playoffs last year, Barry Trotz said, I want everyone in free agency. He said, I'm spending it all. He goes out and gets two proven winners. He gets Jonathan Marchessault, who has won a Conn Smythe Trophy, and two-time Stanley Cup champion Steven Stamkos in free agency. Unbelievable. Crazy that Stamkos is in Nashville and somewhere that's not Tampa Bay. It does truly feel like 2016. Speaking of, is this the best Predators team since they made the run to the Cup final? Had a really good team in 2019 also, but I think this might be one of the best teams on paper that we have seen from Nashville. And it's going to be an exciting team to see. On the back end, they've added a guy like Brady Shea, who plays a good veteran game on the back end, will possibly play next to Roman Josi. It's going to be interesting to see in Nashville. A team was off to a 2-0 start with a brand new head coach, the New Jersey Devils. After missing the playoffs last year due to some injuries, they quite frankly are going to get healthy now, and I think they're going to be much better than they were last year. Believe it or not, I think Jack Hughes has a chance to win the Hart Trophy this year. I like Hughes. I think when healthy is one of the most effective players in the league. Can change the course of a game in the snap of your fingers. They welcome back Tomas Tatar and Stefan Noesen to the forward core. They've already played big roles in the 2 regular season games that the Devils have played in. I personally think this is a deep Devils team. And on the D core, it's pretty deep as well, even though they are going through some injuries right now. Brett Pesce and Brendan Tillin to their defense core, that's just a perfect 1-2 combination to add to a defensive core that is growing and trying to make the playoffs. And a huge trade. They gave them one of their other defensemen that they had in the same scenario, in Kevin Ball, and flip him to Calgary to get a goaltender that they desperately needed. I may as well also put the Stanley Cup here, because the New Jersey Devils now have a goaltender who has already proven in the first 2 regular season games that can win you some games and make some saves. The Devils are a team that are coming into their own. They're a scary team. They'll make the playoffs this year. We'll see how far they go. The New York Islanders, a full year of Patrick Waugh. We'll see what ends up happening. They've actually just recently waived Pierre Engvall, a few years on that contract. I'm not sure if anyone's going to pick him up. But the Islanders are trending in the right direction. I'm not convinced they'll make the playoffs this year. Last season, they did have a round 1 loss to the Hurricanes in 5 games. Like I mentioned earlier, a full year of Patty Waugh helps. A full year of actual training camp helps. Their big free agency, one of the biggest fish this free agency was Anthony Duclair, and the Islanders end up snagging him to a 4-year deal. Are they going to roll with Ilya Sorokin, or are they going to go to Semyon Varlamov? I need to see Sorokin play as many games as he can. I know he kind of lost the net a bit last year, but just give him the net. It's Ilya Sorokin's net to lose, in my opinion. Just give him the net. They signed Maxim Siplikov from Russia. He's already made an impact in some preseason games against the Rangers. So, yeah, the Islanders are a team. The Metro's good. They're right on the cusp for me at making the playoffs, but the Metro's good. And now, on to a team that you and I, if you're a Rangers fan from my channel and you're watching because you're a Rangers fan, a team you and I all know too well of. The New York Rangers. They're running it back, plain and simple. They didn't really do too much. For my Ranger fans, we will go to a very deep dive stream and talk much more about the New York Rangers. But Igor Shesterkin's still the star of this team. 55 wins last year, top of the league. They lose in 6 games to the Florida Panthers in the Eastern Conference Finals. They made a big trade and acquired a guy who's won a Stanley Cup before in Vegas, Riley Smith. I'm expecting just a turnaround season for Riley Smith in general. Seemed a little uninterested in Pittsburgh, but is happy to now hopefully be a New York Ranger. He's a big body and fast body on that ice. We'll see what he provides to the New York Rangers top 6. Yeah, new coach Travis Green. He'll come in, get a full year. I don't have them making the playoffs. I'll explain in a little. But yeah, in my opinion, I just don't know if the Senators have what it takes to get over that hump. The East is going to be a muck, in other words, at the bottom, especially near the wild card. It's going to be a dogfight until the end. The Senators need to make the playoffs, though, this year, right? They traded away Jacob Chikrin, finally, to the Washington Capitals. They got Nick Jensen, who I like for the defensive core. They trade away Matthew Joseph to the St. Louis Blues, who's a guy I thought could have provided some depth for them. Their young stars do get 1 year wiser, as I just mentioned before, and if those guys can stay healthy, they could possibly propel Ottawa. They have a huge advantage in net now. They trade for Linus Ullmark, who can absolutely steal you some games. The Philadelphia Flyers, a team who's going to be very interesting to watch once again this season. They kind of quit on Torts last year. It dwindled down to the final months of them making the playoffs. I mean, they were in a playoff position for the better part of last season, and then, like I mentioned, just kind of quit in the last couple months. This year, they're going to look to build off of that. They're adding Matvei Michkov to their forward core. They're hoping they can come in and make a positive impact to the offense. But they're a little strapped to the cap when it comes to money, thanks to the Ristolainen, Ellis, and Johansson debacle. Philadelphia's got their hands full when it comes to contracts and personnel. But as for playoffs, I'm not too sure. Fedotov is coming over for the Flyers, so Fedotov. So yeah, he'll be the goaltender most likely of the future for the Flyers. And my rookie watch is Matvei Michkov. I think if the Flyers want to do anything this year, Michkov is going to have to propel them over that. After missing the playoffs last year for the first time in a while, they go into the offseason, they re-sign Crosby, make sure that they're committed to him. They say, hey, we're going to try to build a team around you, and we're committed to win still. We promise it. They sign Anthony Beauvillier and Blake Lizotte for the forward core. They trade for Kevin Hayes and Cody Glass. Bunch of different guys that can potentially play with Sidney Crosby here. Another huge trade, Rutger McGroarty, and another rookie watch as well. Rutger McGroarty coming over from the Winnipeg Jets. He's a guy who could potentially play on the bottom six. And yeah, like I mentioned before, I mean, they're going to try to give Sidney Crosby a bunch of different options to play with and see what works best. But in my opinion, I don't know if it's going to get the job done for Sidney Crosby. And the Pittsburgh Penguins. So I have them not making the playoffs this year. Yeah, sorry Penguins fans. I apologize. But no playoffs for you. They've signed Matt Grzelcyk to the back end as well, though. I do like that for them. We just talked about the summer of Barry Trotz, but it was also the summer of Mike Creer. He hires Ryan Warsofsky as their new head coach. He signs a bunch of free agents as well. The Sharks have their youth movement going strong. They're adding veterans like Wenberg and Toffoli to their forward core. They're bringing Barclay Goodrow back in a little reunion. They made a big splash in a trade with the Predators to acquire Yaroslav Askarov. However, they did send him down, so doesn't look like he's going to be starting his NHL journey with the Sharks quite yet. But he could potentially be a goaltender of the future for the Sharks and this rebuilding team. The team is going to look different, though. They're going to add in these young kids in Celebrini and Will Smith with all of these veterans. It's a great opportunity for a bunch of these young players. It's a great opportunity for a bunch of these veteran forwards. I like the way that the San Jose Sharks are trending. The Seattle Kraken already in year 4. I can't believe it. They add Stanley Cup champs Chandler Stevenson and Brandon Montour in free agency. The Kraken are looking to re-enter the playoffs after missing last year. They add cup-winning coach as well in Dan Bylsma. First time he's coming to coach in a few seasons in the NHL. But yeah, the Kraken are going to be a fun team to watch. Not too much about them this year. A rookie watch for me is going to be Shane Wright. You know, if he can possibly potentially make the team this year, I think that would be great for him, for the Kraken. We all know their star is Matty Beniers. As for the playoffs, I'm not sure. I'm not sure about the Kraken. The St. Louis Blues, they made a lot of changes. They trade for Radek Faksa. They offer-sheeted Broberg and Holloway. And now a full year of Drew Bannister. And they're going to try to seek the playoffs once again. I'm not sure what to think about the Blues. Seemed like they quit on a coach in Berube that they once thrived well under. I get a lot of, this is a few years later now, almost 5 seasons later, removed from the Stanley Cup. So the personnel is a bit different. Jake Neighbors is going to be a star. He's only 22 years old. He had 27 goals last year. He's going to play next to Robert Thomas, I'm sure, and get first-line minutes again. It's a star watch. I think if the Blues make the playoffs this year, look out for Jake Neighbors' name a lot. I'm thinking 35, 40 goals this year for Jake Neighbors. I'm dead serious. Because I also like the way the Blues played last year. Not under Berube, under Bannister. It was so strange. So that's also why I have them as a maybe making the playoffs. So, yeah, it's going to be a great hockey season. It truly is going to be a great hockey season. The Tampa Bay Lightning, yes. Round 1 last year, they lost to the Florida Panthers in 5 games. They are turning a page in their franchise. They named Victor Hedman their captain after letting Steven Stamkos go in free agency. However, themselves made a big splash in free agency. They grabbed Jake Gensel, arguably the biggest fish in free agency. They're going to need their top guys to be just that. Kucherov, Point, Hedman. They're going to need to play a huge factor this year for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Braden Point to me is an X factor on this team. He's a guy who's still entering his prime, and he's still part of this main core. The Bolts have a chance to make the playoffs. I'm not sure if it's so much of a guarantee as it once was. I think the loss of Steven Stamkos is bigger than what people are thinking and what people should be making of it. I think this is going to be a loss in that locker room. I know his game is slowed down a bit, but I still think his presence in that locker room at least will be missed. So that's why I have them as a maybe. They'll probably make the playoffs. Don't take these too much to heart. Don't take them too much to heart. Oh, I like this team. The Toronto Maple Leafs, after a brutal 7-game series round 1 loss last season to the Boston Bruins, they name Craig Berube the head coach. They add Chris Tanev to the back end. They add Oliver Ekman-Larsson also to the defensive core. Hanekpa will also be on the defensive core as well. The story for the Leafs is what it always been. It's been their stars needing to shine. Mitch Marner, William Nylander, Austin Matthews, and John Tavares. They all need to shine. This is now Joseph Woll's net. I absolutely have them making the playoffs. I actually have them as a team to possibly win the Stanley Cup this year. I'm not going too crazy yet thinking that far, but a good soft watch this year should be Matt Nyes. Matt Nyes, I'm sure, will be playing some top 6 minutes again for the Leafs. But the Leafs have a vibe right now. Matthews now has the C. Berube, no music at practice. I think this is going to be a good culture Leafs team. I hope it's different, though. I just hope it's different for the Leafs this year. I do. The Vancouver Canucks, one of my favorite teams heading into this season. They're obviously a team who won the division last year, looking to repeat that. It's hard to do that in back-to-back seasons, but other than Edmonton, I think, and maybe Vegas, I do think it's realistic for Vancouver to possibly defend as division champions. Quinn Hughes, I also think, can possibly win another Norris Trophy this year. I think he's that good. I think they're going to need him to be that good. But the Canucks are going to look to ride the wave from last year. They added Daniel Sprong, Jake DeBrusk, Danton Heinen, 3 guys I love for this forward core. I'm high on the Canucks this year. I think Quinn Hughes does something we haven't seen in a very, very long time. He has back-to-back 90-point season as a defenseman. I'm calling it. I think we haven't seen it in 30 years. I think we're going to get it. It's Quinn Hughes, I'm calling it now. Quinn Hughes, back-to-back 90-point seasons. But yeah, similar team on paper last season, except in goal. The uncertainty of Thatcher Demko leaves this Canucks team in a roadblock. They have Silos, Lankinen. We'll see who ends up claiming the number 1 spot. But I do still have them making the playoffs. Like I said, I think they could possibly win the division. The Vegas Golden Knights. They lose Jonathan Marchessault in free agency. They signed Victor Olofsson. They do have a similar team on paper to last season. Last season, it was a round 1 loss to the Dallas Stars in 7 games. I'm expecting Jack Eichel to stay healthy. I'm expecting Jack Eichel to have a huge season. I would love to see Jack Eichel win the Hart Trophy this year. They're going to need their stars once again to step up. It seems like a theme throughout the NHL, needing the top guys to be the top guys. Most of the time they are, and that's why teams win. So Jack Eichel, no exception here. The guy in Vegas, and will need to be the guy for Vegas if they want to make the playoffs. We're winding down. We're almost at playoff predictions. If you guys are enjoying this video, please remember to leave a like. I know it's a long one. On to the Washington Capitals, who were swept last year by the President's Trophy winning New York Rangers. All right, huge trade. They win the Jacob Chikrin sweepstakes. I mean, that's really what new GM Chris Patrick. Well, that's what his goal was to win the Jacob Chikrin sweepstakes. He went to work on the phones with some other GMs. It was his first go around as GM for the Capitals. They traded for Pierre-Luc Dubois. They've traded for Beck Malenstein. They traded for Andrew Mangiapane. And they trade for new goaltender Logan Thompson. Yeah, I think the Caps will make another run like they did last year and make the playoffs. There's a couple wild card spots up for grabs. I think they do it. But should be a fun year for the Caps. And obviously, Alexander Ovechkin, he's on the chase for Gretzky's goal record. It's going to be awesome to see. I have the Caps making the playoffs. I like them. I like them. The Winnipeg Jets, a really, really good season last year. They lose in the first round, however, to the Colorado Avalanche in 5 games. This season now will be their first full year for Scott Arniel taking over as head coach from Rick Bowness. But yeah, this is going to be a good Winnipeg Jets team. Trophy watch, Josh Morrissey. They add Colin Miller to the back end. Yeah, not too much on paper. Differently than they were last year, but should be a fun Winnipeg Jets team. Now, earlier we had the Arizona Coyotes. No more. We now have the Utah Hockey Club making their own rookie watch. They also just recently named Clayton Keller as their captain. For you that don't know, for you that live under a rock, the Utah Hockey Club is now a thing. Yes, they have moved. The Arizona Coyotes have moved from Arizona to Utah and will be playing there. And they actually might be pretty good. They might be pretty okay. I wouldn't say good, but it's an exciting season. It's their first year. I don't have them making the playoffs, but they made some okay moves. They made a big trade for Mikhail Sergachev. They traded for John Marino, who might not start the season, but they signed Kevin Stenlund to the forward core, former Stanley Cup champion. It's going to be fun to see for the Utah Hockey Club. But yeah, it's going to be awesome. It's just going to be really cool to see a new team in the NHL. It sucks about the Arizona Coyotes, but yeah, those are every single team's previews. I appreciate you guys watching and sticking around. I got the Panthers taking down the Atlantic, the Devils the Metro, the Predators the Central, and the Canucks the Pacific. The Canucks one worries me a bit because of the goaltending, but it is what it is. At the other end of things, at the end of the league, at the back end of the league, I got Ottawa, man. I don't like Ottawa at all. I don't think they have what it takes at all to make the playoffs. This is like one of my hard takes this year. I think Ottawa completely muffs it once again. I think Montreal does better than them by the end of the season. By April, I think Montreal ends ahead of Ottawa. Pittsburgh, I don't think is going to be that good. Minnesota as well. I think Minnesota finishes behind Utah. I think Utah has a very good first season. I think the Blues might do a little bit better than I put them. At the bottom, you see some dark horse trophy races. Morrissey might not be too much of a dark horse, but Lafreniere for Hart Trophy, I think as his own player, Lafreniere's coming into his own. I think we have a chance to see Alexis Lafreniere really become that elite player. Hart Trophy, why not? Josh Morrissey, like I mentioned earlier, possibly a Norris Trophy. I'm kind of set on him and Quinn Hughes. Obviously, I would love Adam Fox to win it, but in all reality, would love Quinn Hughes or Josh Morrissey to win a Norris Trophy. President's Trophy, the Nashville Predators for myself. And the Calder Trophy, I've seen a lot about this kid, Lane Hudson of the Montreal Canadiens. He's my pick. He looks unbelievable as a defenseman. He looks like Cale Makar 2.0, a little bit smaller, maybe leaning towards more of the Quinn Hughes department. But yeah, he's going to be one of my Calder Trophy picks this year. But yeah, I also have a little surprise for you. So not only do we have standings predictions, and finally we have power rankings. I'm going to try to do these at least once or twice a week. Try to. Just across videos on the channel. But yeah, since the Devils got off to a 2-0 start, I can't put them above the Panthers until they play a game. Just respect to the champs. So they're number 2. Sabres are 0-2. So they're all the way at the bottom. They're behind the Sharks. Sorry, but you had a chance to get 4 points. You couldn't even get 2. You couldn't even get 1. You have 0 points. You're bottom of the league for me. This is something I worked on last year, and I never fell through with it. I never ended up streaming or videoing or doing anything with it. So I was really happy that I was able to sit down and do it this year, and just do it basically a single team preview, every team preview. About an hour of filming. Again, we'll see how long this ends up being, but I do appreciate you guys watching it with me. Please leave a like if you did enjoy, and yeah, we'll be talking hockey all year long. So subscribe if you guys want to stick around and enjoy it. I'll see you guys later.